Hi, I'm Lisa from Australian travel and migration blog dreamingofdownunder.com. In my last video I talked about the differences between university in Australia and university in the UK based on my exchange year to the University of Queensland in Brisbane from the University of Sheffield. And today I'm going to talk about the process that I went through to get a place on the exchange year. It was more difficult than I was expecting, but it was a long time ago and there are more universities to choose from now, more places, so hopefully it wouldn't be so difficult. If you think you might want to do an exchange year, here are my tips and the process I went through. So what made me apply in the first place? Some people had chosen Sheffield University specifically because it offered an exchange year, but I'd actually never heard of the study abroad programme when I started there. It was only in my second year when some of my course mates told me about it that I knew, and then 4 of us decided that we would all go to the same Australian university and spend a year there together. But we didn't realise quite how hard it was going to be to get places, so this is what we went through. The first hurdle we went through was matching the courses, so we had to pick from the Australian syllabus exactly which modules that we would study on our year abroad, and then we had to match them to very similar modules in Sheffield that we would have studied, and this took quite a lot of time and we had to do it over the Christmas holidays so we could apply in January. So one guy just couldn't be bothered to do it, so that only left 3 of us in the running. So the hurdle 2 was a minimum entry requirement, so we didn't realise that if your grades weren't high enough they wouldn't even consider you for the scheme. So one of us, even though he was actually the cleverest and ended up getting a first, he just hadn't done much work in his first year and he'd gone out a lot, so he was immediately rejected and wasn't offered a place. The third hurdle we went through was the competition. So because we were in our second year when we applied, they looked at our first year grades, and other people who were in their first year when they applied, their A-level results were used. So because your first year marks don't count towards your final mark in Sheffield, and because the first year was the most difficult in terms of adjusting to the bigger workload compared to A-levels, none of us had done as well in our first year as we did in later years, whereas for the first years, even if they'd got worse A-level results than us, they were looking at their A-levels, so some of the first years got places above us. So actually the 2 of us were both rejected based on that, and they told us to apply to some American universities that had still got places instead. So I was on the verge of applying to an American university that nobody wanted to go to. I think it was some small one in the middle of nowhere. And then I got a call to say that somebody had dropped out from the University of Queensland and they offered me a place because I was first on the reserve list. So I then got a place. So what I'd done, back then you could only apply to 3 Australian universities, now there's a lot more. So you could either go to Perth, Wollongong, which is just south of Sydney, or Queensland. So purely because all the advertising material for Wollongong had a picture of a beach on, everybody wanted to go there, so I thought I'd hedge my bets and put Queensland as my first choice instead, so there would be less competition, and that worked out for me, so I got a place. And then believe it or not, a second person also dropped out from the University of Queensland, and my course mate was next on the reserve list, so he was offered a place, but he just signed a contract to live in a house with his girlfriend for the next year, so he ended up turning it down. And because no one else who'd applied met the minimum entry requirements in terms of their grades, nobody ever took that place and it just got wasted, which is ridiculous. So now I was going to Australia for the year, but none of my friends were coming, and I'd never done any travelling or backpacking at that age. I'd never done that by myself, so it was a very big step. So the next stage was organising it all, and what I wasn't expecting was to be called to a meeting where I met all the other people who were doing the exchange year. So 4 of us were going to Brisbane, so we all made friends, and then me and Liz, who's another girl going, we decided that we would team up and book our flights together and choose the same accommodation. So then we had to get our visas, so this involved paying for a medical examination by a special panel doctor and then applying for a student visa. My visa didn't come through for some reason, so I had to go down to London, queue outside the embassy there, get them to process it quickly. They told me to run to a post office and get like an express post envelope and run back and give it to them, and then that came through just in time. So then it was time to fly there, so me and the other girl Liz, we flew over with Malaysian Airlines, and we'd booked to stay in a college which is the same as a halls of residence. So this meant we met loads of people straight away. There was loads of international students there, so it was a really, really good way to make friends. Also, when we got there, just by chance, Sam, who was another guy from the University of Sheffield, he'd booked the same college, so we all ended up being friends for the whole year. Because Australia has seasons the opposite way around to the UK, their summer is at Christmas time, so when We flew over in July. That was to join the start of their second semester. So that was technically our first semester. And then at Christmas time, we had the 3-month summer holidays. So I went off on a big backpacking trip with Liz, which was my first backpacking experience. And we did a bus tour around Australia. Then we went back to the University of Queensland for our second semester, which started in March and ended, I think, the very end of June or beginning of July. So then I flew back home at the beginning of July and then had my summer holidays. And then after that, we went back to Sheffield for our final year. So you weren't allowed to do your final year at the exchange university. You had to do it at your home university. So because I was a second year when I applied, that meant I had to come home and do a 4th year. So I had to do a master's. I liked Australia so much and enjoyed backpacking so much that I went back on a working holiday after I graduated and I did a gap year. And then 6 years ago, I got permanent residency and moved back to Australia permanently. So I now live in Sydney. So just some facts about doing an exchange year. It's very different to doing your whole degree in another country, which can be really expensive. So this is just spending 1 year of your degree, or I think some universities offer 1 semester, and you just switch to a university that's partnered with your university for that year. So you're just carrying on your normal degree, and then you're awarded your degree from your home university. In terms of tuition fees, so you don't pay the tuition fees to the exchange university, you just keep paying them to your home university, and they actually reduced the fees for us because of the cost of going abroad. So for us, I think they halved it, but now when I had a look, it's much more reduced than that. So the reduction in your tuition fees should really cover your flights and visa and insurance. I definitely recommend studying abroad. It's a really good way to dip your feet into travelling, but in a sort of safe environment where you'll meet people easily and it's kind of structured. We met people from all over the world, and we're still friends with some people now that we met then. Because we had so many students from other countries, everyone really wanted to make the most of their time there and go out and explore. If you want to hear more about what university in Australia is like compared to the UK, I'll link my previous video. I talk about the course structure, the grades, how I got much better grades in Australia and it really bumped my score up in Sheffield, the nightlife, the lifestyle, dress code, all of that. I'll also link to my blog posts about university in Australia below. Please leave a comment if you've studied abroad or you've got anything else to add to this or what your experience was like. Please like and subscribe for more videos on life in Australia. Thanks for watching.